Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Yeshiva League Pass Faceoff. I'm your host, Josh Cass, and we are sponsored by the Weiselberg Law Firm. For 16 years, you've entrusted Elliot with the growth and guidance of your kids, and now it's time to let him do the same for your family's most important asset, your home. Admitted in both New York and New Jersey, Elliot can help guide you through any residential or commercial purchase, sale, refinance, or lease with championship quality and award-winning care. If you're looking for your commercial coach or a new home is your goal, reach out to the Weiselberg Law Real Estate Services today at 917-952-2597 or wiselawesque@gmail.com, reminding everyone once again, check out the Weiselberg Law Firm and remember, choose wisely. Today, we're on our fifth episode of the season, our second season, and we have Jordan Serviss, who was one of the alternate captains on the Kushner Cobras for the varsity team this past season, who unfortunately had his career come to an end last Tuesday. However, certainly went out with a bang. And Jordan, welcome. That's first off. Second off, I just want to ask you, what are your sort of emotions right now going through the whole thing?
Obviously I'm angry. We went into that game. We wanted it bad.
Yeah.
The seniors on our team, we were not ready to kind of leave. We wanted that game. We played them twice before. We were focused. We knew what we wanted, and we gave it our all. We definitely left it all out there.
Yeah, I think there's no question about that. And just real quick before we, I guess start going towards the bulk of this, I was talking to Freddie Dresner, one of your teammates, at the end of the game. I think it was probably one of his parents who came up and said, you guys definitely went out, the way you guys want to go out if you're going to lose a game at any point, which obviously I don't want to talk too much about because I'm not here to bring back painful memories already, even though they're not so far away. But I definitely want to, point it out there, There was no question about about the fact that you guys definitely did leave it out there. There was no question about that. I was there standing right behind the TABC net the entire game. And I was like, well, if this is Kushner at their best, then they would have beaten plenty of teams. Just me, in the moment, But realistically, I was talking with some other guys about this. And ultimately, I personally came to the conclusion that literally any other team other than TABC that night, and you guys would have been on to the semis. I really believe that. I think it's something that you, as one of the leaders of that team should know, if there's anything you are going to take out of that, with the fact that you're not moving on. But I think, DRS at their best, Frisch at their best, SAR at their best. You played, I know you guys didn't match up with DRS this season, but playing two close games with Frisch, beating SAR once, and playing another close game with them, I certainly believe there is no question that any other team that night, you guys would be moving on. And keep in mind, on the road as well, you guys played a perfect game, near perfect game. It was a literal difference of one bounce going one way. Last year, there was comparison in the JV championship that when DRS played TABC, everyone thought TABC was going to win, but it was a close game. It was a one-goal game, 2-1, similar way. One goal comes late, take advantage and just play good defense the rest of the way. And the difference is one bounce. Sometimes that's all it takes. But, to take away another thing to highlight was, other than Chaim Mermelstein from TABC, not even a field player, you were by far, I think, the best player on the court that entire game on both sides. I think, Mo really had a game plan going into that game. And I think that you kind of flipped it around, and they weren't, I don't think that they were ready for it. I really don't. So, look, props on what's been, ended tough, but a very, very strong career, I know. With that being said, is there anything that you look back on now and say, damn, I I got this done, I accomplished this or that, what's that thing that you looked at, or what's that thing you're looking at and saying, wow, so many things that I did, but what would be that one thing, if any?
Basically, in full was, we took our small school, our small roster. We don't have the type of team that TABC, Frisch, where they could roll out 3 lines of solid players. For my entire high school career, we've always had 1-2 lines, and that was it. We were used to playing most of the 40 minutes of that game, however long it is. We're used to playing most of that entire game and being gassed by the end. I think this season, finally, I know you mentioned in a previous episode the 10th graders that we brought onto our team, James Orbeck and Kobe Eisberg.
Yeah.
They helped us a lot. They stepped up big, played at the varsity level. And this year we kind of had a depth that we didn't have before. And our goal was just a push. We had the skill. The only thing I could say is our team was our own worst enemy. There was games we should have won, we shouldn't have dropped. If you look at our TABC games, we had the skill to come close, but when we needed to, against the easy teams, we kind of dropped down to their skill level, which is our mistake. But we're lucky enough to get into the playoffs and have a shot, and it just didn't go our way.
Yeah. Look, I mean, Elliot and I talked about it on the JV one briefly, not on the JV playoff prediction briefly, because we did mention you guys had played TABC that night. But we talked about it on the playoff push episode, saying that if there was any team you were going to give a shot to that wasn't a seed hosting their game, that Kushner was that team. With all due respect to Hafter, Hank, and SAR. I mean, SAR we also gave a little bit of light over there, saying, okay, we don't know what to expect from YD. We know what to expect from SAR. So, you can go that way. But Hank going into Frisch was not a matchup that favored them. Hafter going into DRS was not a matchup that favored them. Not to say this matchup favored you guys, but you just gotten your taste of TABC, I think, what was it, just over a week prior. And you managed to find a way to poke some holes in that defense. And I think that, that being said, I said, this is the one team that y'all are going to look at and see that they're the 8th seed and, not really respect them. And we were the only two guys that were publicly saying it at the time. Put some respect on them, because for a 1 versus 8 matchup, this has the potential to be the best playoff matchup of the entire postseason. And ultimately, in my opinion, unless the championship game, I don't think it's going to happen in the semis. I really don't. Unless the championship game completely blows it out of the water, I don't think any matchup is going to be as great as that one. It was everything you wanted: tight goaltending, but offensive opportunities, good defensive plays. You had power play goals. You had shorthanded, I think maybe, no, not shorthanded. Sorry. You had, you had highlight reel goals. You had just really a tight, grinded out game where skill plays on both sides. I remember you almost pulled the Michigan off on one side. I was literally talking to Mo about it last night. And yeah, I mean, just simply a great game, no other way to put it. Let me turn it in a direction that I haven't gone with many of my interviews in the past. But what do you make of that varsity team for next year with those guys? And especially now that I have my fair understanding of guys like James Orbeck and Kobe Eisenberg. I coached against them last year on the JV level. But my question is, now that they were the JV age this year, but moved up to varsity and got their taste, and they performed. Don't get me wrong. They certainly performed. I know it's only 2 guys we're talking about. These are 2 of potentially the top 10 players in the league next year. I really believe that. And that's with an age class above them as well by 1 grade. We're not discounting that either. I think that it should be known, though, that, you guys, you specifically just mentioned about the fact that you've never really had a deep team, and even bringing up these 2 guys really completed, a top 2 lines for you guys. You had 8 players that you can run out at any time, any combination of those 8 players, 4 defensemen, 4 offensemen, and just be comfortable playing, and you can kind of allocate your depth in ways that, you maybe if you need to take 1 or 2 of them off at a time, just to maybe deepen it up a little bit more. Okay, fine. But, you can afford to do that when you've got 2 legitimately strong lines. But next year, when they're going to be back on the younger side, do you think that, I know how I would look at it as a coach without slight. I still say to myself, they were only 2 of a lot of the players that played in varsity, and most of them will be back next year. So my question to you is, where do you see that team next year? What do you make of them?
So the start would be a player that's very underrated and kind of emerged in the middle of the season, Sean Felderman.
Yeah.
Who played towards the end of the season there with Zeke Rabinowitz. As we split up to try to even it out, he really stepped up and said, wow, I could guard these guys. He's going up against Ryan Brandwine, Eitan Adler, Ethan Alter, Jakey Fight. He's going against these highly skilled offensemen that isn't really seen as much in the 11th grade year. That's a different skill level for my age. And he was competing. He was sticking on them, and he was playing very good defense. And we're bringing back up Kobe Eisenberg, who's in 10th grade right now, going up to 11th grade. He just spent an entire season playing against a kid 2 years older than him, playing against the top line, playing on the power play, playing on the penalty kill. He's developing, and next year he's just going to be a force.
Yeah.
In practice, these kids would come and they're playing against me, Zeke, Rabinowitz, Isaac Mendelson, and they're competing. They're pushing themselves. They're saying, all right, we have to stop them, and then translating it into what they're going to do in a game. Next year, I think that defense is going to be impeccable for the league, that offense isn't going to be able to get past. And going back on offense, Sam Steiner last year, when he was his last year in JV, tore it up. He was able to score at will, and now he's bringing back his line mate, James Orbach, who's gotten bigger, played with bigger kids. So I think they're going to be dangerous.
Yeah, and I think it was an excellent move by your coach Corey to to specifically not only bring those guys up, but certainly to line them the way he did, putting obviously Kobe Eisenberg, I know, played a little bit of a mix throughout the season. I know you and Zeke Rabinowitz did split up, but initially when he had that top line, I remember the line that you guys started with in TABC was with you and Zeke on the court at the same time, and allowing him to play with Felderman, a defenseman who he played with last year in junior varsity, certainly I think is something that he intended to build up with. Now, when he split you guys up, I don't know if that was planned or if that was just something he did because he realized he wasn't gonna, be able to have two lines necessarily that were just gonna lock down no matter what. He wanted his two best defensemen split up. I don't know if that's, and it's not for me to know necessarily. He's I'm not telling you to give me his secrets, but I am gonna say that next, and especially the other thing. Well, I mentioned Eisenberg with Felderman. Definitely, I think a good move putting Orbach with Steiner. You mentioned Sam tore it up last year in junior varsity, and part of that was at my expense because we were the only playoff game that he won, and he missed the first one during the regular season. That being said, I don't think that, you can look at that line and say, well, if we shut Steiner down, then we'll be in the clear, because James Orbach just also had a very good showing in varsity. And I think that when push comes to shove, it's very underrated that for 3 years that they'll be together, with Orbach being a year younger than Steiner and Eisenberg being a year younger than Felderman, that these are guys who are playing with each other as their only line mates throughout high school. Something that Elliot and I compared Jakey Fight and Ethan Alter doing, something Avi Don Berman, the Flatbush coach, and I compared doing, Mark Matlis and Moji Grossman doing, Eitan Adler and Ryan Brandwine doing. All of those matchups that all those pairings that we just named have been paired together since their freshman year, and they haven't played with anyone else. So I think that it's definitely something to look at. I think that even though you guys do get a little bit thinner next, or I guess if you're not there, but either way, if Kushner varsity does get a little bit thinner next year, I do believe they have the talent and ways to make up for that. I'm going to do something I haven't done with any of my interviews yet, and this is for sure a first, but what can you speak to about TABC or about Frisch? I know you matched up with these teams a lot during the regular season and even TABC in the postseason, or SAR. I know you didn't face DRS, so we'll leave them out of the conversation for now. But of those three teams, and if you know anything about DRS, then shout it out. Who do you think is going to bring it home this year, just having played against the competition or knowing your competition this year?
Personally, I have to say, I think it's going to come down to Frisch and TABC again, a rematch of what happened last year. And just by playing both of these teams, I think if Frisch plays the way that they can and steps up, they have TABC skill-wise. Ethan Alter and Jakey Fight are absolutely incredible offensive pairing. And when you see them both coming down at you, it's a hard thing to deal with. And TABC defensemen are going to have a hard time with that. I know they were running 3D against us. I don't know if Cyril Roplat is going to be back, but they're able to move the ball and kind of walk their way around defensemen in a way that is incredible. And their team hasn't really changed much from their championship winning team last year. They still have Ellie Knapp and Ben Srolitz on D. Strong D that could take care of Eitan Adler and Ryan Brandwine, Matis and Shea. The goalie battle is going to be real. I mean, Mermelstein stepped up big against us. We had a lot of shots. He was there. He has to play incredible. So does Andrew Srolitz. There's just going to be a ton of shots. It's going to be a physical game. And I personally think it's going to come down to the wire against Frisch and TABC.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot. I think that's a matchup most, if not everyone, is predicting. I don't want to take anything away from SAR and DRS, and I'm not going to comment because there will be a championship predictions episode coming out. So you guys will hear about it then. But right now, I mean, the semis are set. We've got Frisch going into DRS on Wednesday night next week. I believe, as the schedule states right now, that SAR is going to TABC that same night. But there, I think, is a little bit of a chance that game might get moved. I'm not 100% sure on that yet. It's maybe a day before or a day later. That being said, I think you hit the nail right on the head. Personally, that's also what I predicted, although I predicted it going TABC's way. But you mentioned something about it, about goaltending. And I want to bring it back towards one of your teammates who we didn't discuss, Ethan Hirschnov. What can you say about the performance that he had in TABC in your playoff game? And more than that, I want to also mention something that I was talking to a few other coaches throughout the league about, like what they would think of this game. And they said the same thing. Play-wise, if Kushner steps up, they're going to have a shot. They're going to need to work for it, but they're going to have a shot. The big question mark was Hirschnov coming into that game, because if you look at it on paper, Mermelstein's the best goalie in varsity this year. He's played like it. He deserves that title. There are other goalies who are not so incredibly far behind him, but even with that team, there are ways. You mentioned Frisch has played close with them in the past. SAR beat them once. DRS is not a team that you're looking at and saying, okay, fine, we could walk on them. No, you can't. Hank played a close game with them. And I'm looking at this and I said, look, Hirschnov, if he's on, he's tough to beat. But what version of him are we going to get? If you get him on, you're going to have a challenge, and a big challenge. And he was on. And this was after hearing from other coaches saying, you know what, he could be on, but he's had a history of not playing so incredibly well, specifically at TABC. So with that all in the picture, and then for him to bring the performance that he put out, what can you say about it?
Hirschnov, first, during that game, he played absolutely incredible. He was making unbelievable saves. But throughout the season, he kind of realized this is serious. He's got to step up. And as the season progressed, each game, he started bringing it a little more. And by the end of the season, towards our MTA games, when we were making our playoff push, Hirschnov was a wall. He was making incredible saves. He was keeping us in games, and there's nothing more we could ask. Coming into TABC, the first game we had, it's hard to keep your head. There's a lot of things that happen. There's reffing mistakes. There's heckling from the TABC fans behind. There's the little chips after the whistle. Obviously, it's a chippy game. It's hockey.
Yeah.
There's nothing to do. But he had a big job to kind of keep his head on straight and keep focus on the game, which he proved that he can against that TABC team because he was with it till the end.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely want to get we didn't mention it, and I want to give props to him. He was absolutely outstanding. Big part of the reason why any other team in the league that night, and you guys would have been on to the semis. And there are a lot of people saying that right now, by the way. I just, I want that to be known. With the other thing being said, that I also briefly touched on, but didn't exactly go right into, which I want to kind of bring back a little bit of right now. You mentioned, the play of other teammates on your team, obviously Steiner, Orbach, Eisenberg, and Felderman. But how about for the seniors on your team as well, who also really brought it? Freddie Dresner was fantastic. Isaac Mendelson was fantastic. Zeke Rabinowitz was all over the court. You guys really played an all-out incredible game with, I said, the difference being really just like one bounce. But what can you speak about the guys who you've done it with? I know Freddie started in TABC, then came back to Kushner after. But what can you say about the performance that you all have been able to put together, not just necessarily this game or this season, but all throughout your time together as a whole?
So the group of our seniors here have been the backbone of whatever team we've been on since we started playing. Specifically with this season, it's been looking to us to, all right, how are we going to play right now? Coming into TABC, coming into our playoff game, all of us, we were watching our past games, we were watching our mistakes, we were saying, all right, look, you doubled the corner, you left someone open in the slot, get on that. We were finding the holes that we created and finding out what to do to stop it. And when we came to TABC, the four of us, me, Zeke, Freddie, Isaac, And even the seniors that didn't play on the court, that showed up to practice, Ellie Danziger, Liam Jabali, we were there every day. We all competed. And I mean, we tried, we put it all out there, and there was nothing that was going to try to push us away from ourselves. We were all pushing together, discussing every day, what is it that we could do? Where should we move? How should we run our power play? How should we set up? And when it came to it, it was a battle.
Let me ask you, before we start to wrap things up, what is, I already asked you about an accomplishment, you thought, like what, your greatest one was. But to kind of flip it around, this could be, it's the same situation, same scenario, but what is, the most fun, I would say the most fun experience you've had playing Yeshiva League hockey, like one particular game or, like maybe a crazy goal or, a hype crowd or something like that. Like, what would that be for you?
It's hard to pinpoint an exact moment because every team that we're kind of playing, I've known the guys on these teams for a while now. I've my friends from a long time, from camp, from just around on Frisch, SAR, TABC, and going in there and competing with them throughout the entire high school is just unimaginable. I'm lining up against one of my good friends, but I'm looking at the scoreboard and it's a 1-1 game. Honestly, the first game of our season, our home opener, we got all of our Kushner fans to come out, and we were playing SAR, and that came down to the wire. Isaac Mendelson with 5 goals. He put on an incredible performance. That was honestly just so fun. I would say our TABC game, that last playoff game, even though it didn't go our way, the atmosphere in there was great.
Yeah, I just real quick, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I wanted to pinpoint that, and I'm glad you brought it back because you guys really showed up. Like your fan base for that game was rocking more than TABC at times, and that really says something. If you caught what Avidan and I said in the varsity predictions, their fans show. And we didn't talk about how you guys would react to that, but you guys really brought it as well.
Yeah. I mean, the atmosphere at our school, we want to see our teams in the playoffs. Doesn't happen often, but when it does, we all want to come out. To get to the playoffs even, I know we all showed up to YD to watch that game.
Yeah, I heard about that.
It's on YD to get in. We care. It's not like we're just sitting around lazy. We wanted it, and we put it out there.
Also, just one last thing before we start to wrap it up. I also touched on this briefly. You mentioned what you make of that varsity team next year. What would be, as a leader that they looked up to this year, something or a message that you would leave them with going into next year, and knowing that team in varsity next year, if you mirror them as last year's JV team, they went to the semis. They've got a high ceiling, and it's very possibly higher. What would be that message to them?
Whatever I'm going to say, they already know. They obviously know they're going to keep pushing. They stood out there and watched TABC celebrate it after that playoff game. And each and every one of those kids, as hurt as we were, our seniors, that's our last game, they were standing there like, I cannot believe this team just beat us. They were angry. They were mad. And they're going to take that into next season. And Sam Steiner, Kobe Eisberg, James Orbeck, these kids aren't quiet. They know what they have to do. They were talking all season along with us. It wasn't just a 4-man show, just seniors talk and they stand quiet. They were just as vocal as we were, and they were equally involved. So they're going to step up and they're going to bring it home.
All right. Well, it's been, again, I definitely want to, again, show recognition that I really don't think that, there's nothing. I'll put it in the great words of Mo Fuchs. You have nothing to be disappointed about. Obviously, I know bringing a championship home was the goal, and I know that it's tough when you don't achieve that goal. But that being said, and take it from me, I never had the luxury of winning a championship either, and having opportunities also to close out. But I think it should be known, like, that is the only performance that comes to recent memory for me that I say, if it was any other team, they'd be alive still. They'd be around. They would be having another chance to give another team a run for their money after looking at them as the 8th seed and saying, oh, well, they're the 8th seed. doesn't really matter. We can mess around with these guys. We can afford to play around. No, I really don't think so. And really, I think that's I'm sure you've probably heard that from a bunch of people already, but if not, then you definitely should have been. There's no question about that. I know it's been an incredible ride for you so far, and definitely want to still congratulate you on a very accomplished career. And before we close it out, is there anyone that you want to shout out or give props to?
I give props to the whole team, our whole roster. Everyone tried, pushed all season. Big props to Corey Copps. He helped us through that. He coached us. If it wasn't for him, we would have been all over the place. That's the truth. He kept our heads on right. He kept us going. And just good luck to all the teams in the playoffs, SAR, Frisch, TABC, DRS. I'm excited to watch it play out.
All right. Well, Jordan, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. We really enjoyed having you. And on top of that, I want to thank all of the viewers for tuning into this episode of Yeshiva League Pass Faceoff. And once again, to the Weiselberg Law Firm for sponsoring. Remember, everyone, please choose wisely.